my surprise, for Ambulinia's heart had still seemed free at the time of their last interview, love beamed from the girl's eyes. One sees that Elfonzo was surprised, too, for when he caught that light, a halloo of smothered shouts ran through every vein. A neat figure, a very neat figure indeed. Then he kissed her. The scene was overwhelming. They went into the parlor. The girl said it was safe, for her parents were abed, and would never know. Then we have this fine picture flung upon the canvas with hardly an effort, as you will notice. Advancing toward him, she gave a bright display of her rosy neck, and from her head the ambrosial locks breathed divine fragrance. Her robe hung waving to his view, while she stood like a goddess confessed before him. There is nothing of interest in the couple's interview. Now at this point the girl invites Elfonzo to a village show, where jealousy is the motive of the play, for she wants to teach him a wholesome lesson, if he is a jealous person. But this is a sham, and pretty shallow. McClintock merely wants a pretext to drag in a plagiarism of his upon a scene or two in Othello. The lovers went to the play. Elfonzo was one of the fiddlers. He and Ambulinia must not be seen together, lest trouble follow with the girl's malignant father. We are made to understand that clearly. So the two sit together in the orchestra in the midst of the musicians. This does not seem to be good art. In the first place, the girl would be in the way, for orchestras are always packed closely together, and there is no room to spare for people's girls. In the next place, one cannot conceal a girl in an orchestra without everybody taking notice of it. There can be no doubt, it seems to me, that this is bad art. Leos is present. Of course, one of the first things that catches his eye is the maddening spectacle of Ambulinia leaning upon Elfonzo's chair. This poor girl does not seem to understand even the rudiments of concealment, but she is in her 17th, as the author phrases it, and that is her justification. Leos meditates, constructs a plan, with personal violence as a basis, of course. It was their way down there. It is a good plain plan, without any imagination in it. He will go out and stand at the front door, and when these two come out he will arrest Ambulinia from the hands of the insolent Elfonzo, and thus make for himself a more prosperous field of immortality than ever was decreed by omnipotence, or ever pencil drew or artist imagined. But, dear me, while he is waiting there the couple climb out at the back window and scurry home. This is romantic enough, but there is a lack of dignity in the situation. At this point McClintock puts in the whole of his curious play, which we skip. Some correspondence follows now. The bitter father and the distressed lovers write the letters. Elopements are attempted. They are idiotically planned, and they fail. Then we have several pages of romantic powwow and confusion, signifying nothing. Another elopement is planned. It is to take place on Sunday, when everybody is at church. But the hero cannot keep the secret. He tells everybody. Another author would have found another instrument when he decided to defeat this elopement, but that is not McClintock's way. He uses the person that is nearest at hand. The evasion failed, of course. Ambulinia, in her flight, takes refuge in a neighbor's house. Her father drags her home. The villagers gather, attracted by the racket. Elfonzo was moved at this sight. The people followed on to see what was going to become of Ambulinia, while he, with downcast looks, kept at a distance, until he saw them enter the abode of the father, thrusting her, that was the sigh of his soul, out of his presence into a solitary apartment, when she exclaimed, "Elfonzo, Elfonzo, oh, Elfonzo, where art thou with all thy heroes? Haste, oh, haste, come thou to my relief. Ride on the wings of the wind. Turn thy force loose like a tempest, and roll on thy army like a whirlwind over this mountain of trouble and confusion. O friends, if any pity me, let your last efforts throng upon the green hills and come to the relief of Ambulinia, who is guilty of nothing but innocent love." Elfonzo called out with a loud voice, "My God, can I stand this? Arouse up, I beseech you, and put an end to this tyranny. Come, my brave boys," said he, "are you ready to go forth to your duty?" They stood around him. "Who," said he, "will call us to arms? Where are my thunderbolts of war? Speak ye the first who will meet the foe. Who will go forward with me in this ocean of grievous temptation? If there is one who desires to go, let him come and shake hands upon the altar of devotion, and swear that he will be a hero, yes, a Hector in a cause like this, which calls aloud for a speedy remedy." "Mine be the deed," said a young lawyer, "and mine alone. Venus alone shall quit her station before I will forsake one jot or tittle of my promise to you. What is death to me? What is all this warlike army, if it is not to win a victory? I love the sleep of the lover and the mighty, nor would I give it over till the blood of my enemies should reek with that of my own. But God forbid that our fame should soar on the blood of the slumberer." Mr. Valeer stands at his door with the frown of a demon upon his brow, with his dangerous weapon (Note 3. It is a crowbar) ready to strike the first man who should enter his door. "Who will arise and go forward through blood and carnage to the rescue of my Ambulinia?" said Elfonzo. "All!" exclaimed the multitude, and onward they went, with their implements of battle. Others, of a more timid nature, stood among the distant hills to see the result of the contest. It will hardly be believed that after all this thunder and lightning not a drop of rain fell. But such is the fact. Elfonzo and his gang stood up and blackguarded Mr. Valeer with vigor all night, getting their outlay back with interest. Then, in the early morning, the army and its general retired from the field, leaving the victory with their solitary adversary and his crowbar. This is the first time this has happened in romantic literature. The invention is original. Everything in this book is original. There is nothing hackneyed about it anywhere. Always, in other romances, when you find the author leading up to a climax, you know what is going to happen. But in this book it is different. The thing which seems inevitable and unavoidable never happens. It is circumvented by the art of the author every time. Another elopement was attempted. It failed. We have now arrived at the end. But it is not exciting. McClintock thinks it is, but it isn't. One day Elfonzo sent Ambulinia another note, a note proposing elopement number 16. This time the plan is admirable. Admirable, sagacious, ingenious, imaginative, deep, oh, everything, and perfectly easy. One wonders why it was never thought of before. This is the scheme. Ambulinia is to leave the breakfast table, ostensibly to attend to the placing of those flowers which should have been done a week ago, artificial ones, of course. The others wouldn't keep so long. And then, instead of fixing the flowers, she is to walk out to the grove and go off with Elfonzo. The invention of this plan overstrained the author, that is plain, for he straightway shows failing powers. The details of the plan are not many or elaborate. The author shall state them himself, this good soul, whose intentions are always better than his English. "You walk carelessly toward the Academy Grove, where you will find me with a lightning steed, elegantly equipped to bear you off where we shall be joined in wedlock with the first connubial rights." Last scene of all, which the author, now much enfeebled, tries to smarten up and make acceptable to his spectacular heart by introducing some new properties: silver bow, golden harp, olive branch, things that can all come good in an elopement, no doubt, yet are not to be compared to an umbrella for real handiness and reliability in an excursion of that kind. And away she ran to the sacred grove, surrounded with glittering pearls that indicated her coming. Elfonzo hails her with his silver bow and his golden harp. They meet. Ambulinia's countenance brightens. Elfonzo leads up the winged steed. "Mount," said he, "ye true-hearted, ye fearless soul, the day is ours." She sprang upon the back of the young thunderbolt, a brilliant star sparkles upon her head. With one hand she grasps the reins, and with the other she holds an olive branch. "Lend thy aid, ye strong winds!" they exclaimed. "Ye moon, ye sun, and all ye fair host of heaven, witness the enemy conquered." "Hold," said Elfonzo, "thy dashing steed." "Ride on," said Ambulinia, "the voice of thunder is behind us." And onward they went with such rapidity that they very soon arrived at Rural Retreat, where they dismounted, and were united with all the solemnities that usually attend such divine operations. There is but one Homer, there is but one Shakespeare, there is but one McClintock, and his immortal book is before you. Homer could not have written this book, Shakespeare could not have written it, I could not have done it myself. There is nothing just like it in the literature of any country or of any epoch. It stands alone, it is monumental, it adds G. Ragsdale McClintocks to the sum of the Republic's imperishable names. End of A Cure for the Blues. This is section 17 of the $30,000 Bequest by Mark Twain. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Curious Book, Complete. Part 1. The foregoing review of the great work of G. Ragsdale McClintock is liberally illuminated with sample extracts, but these cannot appease the appetite. Only the complete book, unabridged, can do that. Therefore, it is here printed. M.T. The Enemy Conquered, or Love Triumphant. Sweet girl, thy smiles are full of charms, thy voice is sweeter still, it fills the breast with fond alarms, echoed by every rill. I begin this little work with an eulogy upon woman, who has ever been distinguished for her perseverance, her constancy, and her devoted attention to those upon whom she has been pleased to place her affections. Many have been the themes upon which writers and public speakers have dwelt with intense and increasing interest. Among these delightful themes stands that of woman, the balm to all our sighs and disappointments, and the most preeminent of all other topics. Here the poet and orator have stood and gazed with wonder and with admiration. They have dwelt upon her innocence, the ornament of all her virtues. First viewing her external charms, such as are set forth in her form and benevolent countenance, and then passing to the deep-hidden springs of loveliness and disinterested devotion. In every clime and in every age she has been the pride of her nation. Her watchfulness is untiring. She who guarded the sepulchre was the first to approach it, and the last to depart from its awful yet sublime scene. Even here, in this highly favored land, we look to her for the security of our institutions, and for our future greatness as a nation. But, strange as it may appear, woman's charms and virtues are but slightly appreciated by thousands. Those who should raise the standard of female worth, and paint her value with her virtues in living colors, upon the banners that are fanned by the zephyrs of heaven, and hand them down to posterity as emblematical of a rich inheritance, do not properly estimate them. Man is not sensible at all times of the nature and the emotions which bear that name. He does not understand, he will not comprehend. His intelligence has not expanded to that degree of glory which drinks in the vast revolution of humanity, its end, its mighty destination, and the causes which operated and are still operating to produce a more elevated station, and the objects which energize and enliven its consummation. This he is a stranger to. He is not aware that woman is the recipient of celestial love, and that man is dependent upon her to perfect his character; that without her, philosophically and truly speaking, the brightest of his intelligence is but the coldest of a winter moon, whose beams can produce no fruit, whose solar light is not its own, but borrowed from the great dispenser of effulgent beauty. We have no disposition in the world to flatter the fair sex. We would raise them above those dastardly principles which only exist in little souls, contracted hearts, and a distracted brain. Often does she unfold herself in all her fascinating loveliness, presenting the most captivating charms, yet we find man frequently treats such purity of purpose with indifference. Why does he do it? Why does he baffle that which is inevitably the source of his better days? Is he so much of a stranger to those excellent qualities as not to appreciate woman, as not to have respect to her dignity? Since her art and beauty first captivated man, she has been his delight and his comfort. She has shared alike in his misfortunes and in his prosperity. Whenever the billows of adversity and the tumultuous waves of trouble beat high, her smiles subdue their fury. Should the tear of sorrow and the mournful sigh of grief interrupt the peace of his mind, her voice removes them all, and she bends from her circle to encourage him onward. When darkness would obscure his mind and a thick cloud of gloom would bewilder its operations, her intelligent eye darts a ray of streaming light into his heart. Mighty and charming is that disinterested devotion which she is ever ready to exercise toward man, not waiting till the last moment of his danger, but seeks to relieve him in his early afflictions. It gushes forth from the expansive fullness of a tender and devoted heart, where the noblest, the purest, and the most elevated and refined feelings are matured and developed in those many kind offices which invariably make her character. In the room of sorrow and sickness this unequaled characteristic may always be seen in the performance of the most charitable acts. Nothing that she can do to promote the happiness of him who she claims to be her protector will be omitted. All is invigorated by the animating sunbeams which awaken the heart to songs of gaiety. Leaving this point, to notice another prominent consideration, which is generally one of great moment and of vital importance. Invariably she is firm and steady in all her pursuits and aims. There is required a combination of forces and extreme opposition to drive her from her position. She takes her stand, not to be moved by the sound of Apollo's lyre, or the curved bow of pleasure. Firm and true to what she undertakes, and that which she requires by her own aggrandizement, and regards as being within the strict rules of propriety, she will remain stable and unflinching to the last. A more genuine principle is not to be found in the most determined, resolute heart of man. For this she deserves to be held in the highest commendation, for this she deserves the purest of all other blessings, and for this she deserves the most laudable reward of all others. It is a noble characteristic, and is worthy of imitation of any age, and when we look at it in one particular aspect it is still magnified, and grows brighter and brighter the more we reflect upon its eternal duration. What will she not do when her word as well as her affections and love are pledged to her lover? Everything that is dear to her on earth, all the hospitalities of kind and loving parents, all the sincerity and loveliness of sisters, and the benevolent devotion of brothers, who have surrounded her with every comfort, she will forsake them all, quit the harmony and sweet sound of the lute and the harp, and throw herself upon the affections of some devoted admirer in whom she fondly hopes to find more than she has left behind, which is not often realized by many. Truth and virtue all combined, how deserving our admiration and love! Ah, cruel would it be in man, after she has thus manifested such an unshaken confidence in him, and said by her determination to abandon all the endearments and blandishments of home, to act a villainous part and prove a traitor in the revolution of his mission, and then turn Hector over the innocent victim whom he swore to protect, in the presence of heaven, recorded by the pen of an angel. Striking as this train may unfold itself in her character, and as preeminent as it may stand among the fair display of her other qualities, yet there is another which struggles into existence and adds an additional luster to what she already possesses. I mean that disposition in woman which enables her in sorrow, in grief, and in distress to bear all with enduring patience. This she has done, and can and will do, amid the din of war and clash of arms. Scenes and occurrences which to every appearance are calculated to rend the heart with the profoundest emotions of trouble, Do not fetter that exalted principle imbued in her very nature. It is true, her tender and feeling heart may often be moved, as she is thus constituted, but she is not conquered. She has not given up to the harlequin of disappointments. Her energies have not become clouded in the last movement of misfortune, but she is continually invigorated by the archetype of her affections. She may bury her face in her hands, and let the tear of anguish roll. She may promenade the delightful walks of some garden, decorated with all the flowers of nature, or she may steal out along some gently rippling stream, and there, as the silver waters uninterruptedly move forward, shed her silent tears. They mingle with the waters, and take a last farewell of their agitated home, to seek a peaceful dwelling among the rolling floods. Yet there is a voice rushing from her breast that proclaims victory along the whole line and battlement of her affections. That voice is the voice of patience and resignation. That voice is one that bears everything calmly and dispassionately amid the most distressing scenes, when the fates are arrayed against her peace, and apparently plotting for her destruction. Still she is resigned. Woman's affections are deep. Consequently, her troubles may be made to sink deep. Although you may not be able to mark the traces of her grief and the furrowings of her anguish upon her winning countenance, yet be assured they are nevertheless preying upon her inward person, sapping the very foundation of that heart which alone was made for the weal, and nothing for the woe of man. The deep recesses of the soul are fields for their operation. But they are not destined simply to take the regions of the heart for their dominion. They are not satisfied merely with interrupting her better feelings, but after a while you may see the blooming cheek beginning to droop and fade. Her intelligent eye no longer sparkles with the starry light of heaven. Her vibrating pulse long since changed its regular motion, and her palpitating bosom beats once more for the midday of her glory. Anxiety and care ultimately throw her into the arms of the haggard and grim monster, Death. But, oh, how patient, under every pining influence. Let us view the matter in bolder colors. See her when the dearest object of her affections recklessly seeks every bacchanalian pleasure, contents himself with the last rubbish of creation. With what solicitude she awaits his return. Sleep fails to perform its office. She weeps while the nocturnal shades of the night triumph in the stillness. Bending over some favorite book, whilst the author throws before her mind the most beautiful imagery, she startles at every sound. The midnight silence is broken by the solemn announcement of the return of another morning. He is still absent. She listens for that voice which has so often been greeted by the melodies of her own, but alas, stern silence is all that she receives for her vigilance. Mark her unwearied watchfulness as the night passes away. At last, brutalized by the accursed thing, he staggers along with rage, and shivering with cold, he makes his appearance. Not a murmur is heard from her lips. On the contrary, she meets him with a smile. She caresses him with tender arms, with all the gentleness and softness of her sex. Here, then, is seen her disposition beautifully arrayed. Woman, thou art more to be admired than the spicy gales of Arabia, and more sought for than the gold of Golconda. We believe that woman should associate freely with man, and we believe that it is for the preservation of her rights. She should become acquainted with the metaphysical designs of those who condescend to sing the siren song of flattery. This, we think, should be according to the unwritten law of decorum, which is stamped upon every innocent heart. The precepts of prudery are often steeped in the guilt of contamination, which blasts the expectations of better moments. Truth and beautiful dreams, loveliness and delicacy of character, with cherished affections of the ideal woman, gentle hopes and aspirations are enough to uphold her in the storms of darkness without the transferred colorings of a stained sufferer. How often have we seen it in our public prints that woman occupies a false station in the world, and some have gone so far as to say it was an unnatural one. So long has she been regarded a weak creature by the rabble and illiterate, they have looked upon her as an insufficient actress on the great stage of human life, a mere puppet to fill up the drama of human existence, a thoughtless, inactive being, that she has too often come to the same conclusion herself, and has sometimes forgotten her high destination in the meridian of her glory. We have but little sympathy or patience for those who treat her as a mere Rosie Melindi, who are always fishing for pretty compliments, who are satisfied by the gossamer of romance, and who can be allured by the verbosity of high-flown words, rich in language, but poor and barren in sentiment. Beset, as she has been, by the intellectual vulgar, the selfish, the designing, the cunning, the hidden, and the artful, no wonder she has sometimes folded her wings in despair and forgotten her heavenly mission in the delirium of imagination. No wonder she searches out some wild desert to find a peaceful home. But this cannot always continue. A new era is moving gently onward. Old things are rapidly passing away. Old superstitions, old prejudices, and old notions are now bidding farewell to their old associates and companions, and giving way to one whose wings are plumed with the light of heaven and tinged by the dews of the morning. There is a remnant of blessedness that clings to her in spite of all evil influence. There is enough of the divine master left to accomplish the noblest work ever achieved under the canopy of the vaulted skies, and that time is fast approaching when the picture of the true woman will shine from its frame of glory, to captivate, to win back, to restore, and to call into being once more the objects of her mission. Star of the brave, thy glory shed o'er all the earth thy army led. Bold meteor of immortal birth, why come from heaven to dwell on earth? Mighty and glorious are the days of youth. Happy the moments of the lover, mingled with smiles and tears of his devoted, and long to be remembered are the achievements which he gains with a palpitating heart and trembling hand. A bright and lovely dawn, the harbinger of a fair and prosperous day, had arisen over the beautiful little village of Cumnor, which is surrounded by the most romantic scenery in the Cherokee country. Brightening clouds seemed to rise from the mist, the fair Chattahoochee, to spread their beauty over the thick forest, to guide the hero whose bosom beats with aspirations to conquer the enemy that would tarnish his name, and to win back the admiration of his long-tried friend. He endeavored to make his way through Shawnee's Mountain, where many meet to catch the gales that are continually blowing for the refreshment of the stranger and the traveler. Surrounded as he was by hills on every side, naked rocks dared the efforts of his energies. Soon the sky became overcast, the sun buried itself in the clouds, and the fair day gave place to gloomy twilight, which lay heavily on the Indian plains. He remembered an old Indian castle that once stood at the foot of the mountain. He thought if he could make his way to this, he would rest contented for a short time. The mountain air breathed fragrance, a rosy tinge rested on the glassy waters that murmured at its base. His resolution soon brought him to the remains of the red man's hut. He surveyed with wonder and astonishment the decayed building which time had buried in the dust, and thought to himself his happiness was not yet complete. Beside the shore of the brook sat a young man, about 18 or 20, who seemed to be reading some favorite book, and who had a remarkably noble countenance, eyes which betrayed more than a common mind. This, of course, made the youth a welcome guest, and gained him friends in whatever condition of life he might be placed. The traveler observed that he was a well-built figure, which showed strength and grace in every movement. He accordingly addressed him in quite a gentlemanly manner, and inquired of him the way to the village. After he had received the desired information, and was about taking his leave, the youth said, "Are you not Major Alfonso, the great musician, the champion of a noble cause, the modern Achilles who gained so many victories in the Florida War?" "I bear that name," said the Major, "and those titles, trusting at the same time that the ministers of grace will carry me triumphantly through all my laudable undertakings, and if, continued the Major, you, sir, are the patronizer of noble deeds, I should like to make you my confidant, and learn your address. The youth looked somewhat amazed, bowed low, mused for a moment, and began. My name is Roswell. I have been recently admitted to the bar.